Hi guys, it's Dylan from Bijou Diamond Jewellery in London with another watch video, and today we're looking at my selection of the top watches for £6,000. I'm going to split the video up into three parts, so it's kind of like a top three, but they're actually going to be split up into brands. So my top three brands for under £6,000. There's also going to be several watches in there that are well under £6,000, but I couldn't put them into my £3,000 category, which was my last video. Okay, so we're going to start with our first brand, which is Tag Heuer. And the first watch that we're going to look at from Tag Heuer, which is probably my favorite from Tag Heuer in this section, and possibly my favorite Tag, out of all their watches in their collection. And that is the Heuer Heritage Calibre 18. I really like this watch. It's just such a classic looking piece. It's also much smaller than their standard models or usual case sizes. Usually tags are quite large. They also wear pretty big as well. They're also quite chunky as well. Their designs aren't so sleek and elegant, in my opinion. They're not so popular for us at Bijou, but our clients that do own tags really do enjoy them. Even though those lugs are quite thick and tall, the proportions of this case is just really nice and classic. Kind of has sort of 60s, 70s vibes, especially 60s vibes, chronograph vibes about it. A little bit of a Daytona-esque vibe about it with those panda dials, those contrasting sub-dials. But yeah, overall, a really nice watch. Definitely has a heritage theme or feel about it. And definitely one of my favorite tags in their collection. The retail price on this watch is £4,500, but it does sell for quite below its list price. So if you're interested in this piece, then contact us and we'll be able to give you a price for this and a good discount off the retail price. Next watch from Tag is the Carrera Calibre Heuer 1. Really, really cool watch. I have reviewed this watch a few years ago, I think, or a couple of years ago. It's an all black watch. It's 45mm, so it's quite large. If you're interested in a slightly smaller version of this watch, then Tag does do a smaller version at 43mm, but not in this specific dial and case setup. So you do get slightly different variation on this watch, but if you're looking for a smaller piece, then there is an option for you. But for me, my favorite variation is this 45mm version that I'm showing you on screen now, the all black variation. Really, really cool looking watch. Definitely a brilliant watch for bigger wrists. The fact it's all black means it doesn't wear too big. You'll see in my video, even though I've got a wrist size of 16.5 centimeters, so not particularly big wrist size, this 45mm case diameter doesn't look too big on me. So yeah, go check out that review if you haven't seen it already, because it is a really cool watch. And the price for the larger one, the 45mm, which I'm talking about here now, is £5,100, and the 43mm example is £5,000. Again, both available from us for much less than their retail price. There are so many different variations of this watch that you can look for as well. If you're not interested in this all black look, there's a steel option, there's even a rose gold option, there's just tons and tons of different options, and they're all around the £5,000–6,000 mark. So yeah, plenty of options and a brilliant option for that price point. Next brand that we're looking at is Panerai, and we're going to start with a pretty standard looking Lumina Marina, and that is the reference PAM 01351. This watch has a retail price of £6,800, but its market value and what we'd sell it for is around £5,500. To start off, a little bit of information on this watch. It is a 44mm case size, so it's kind of the standard case size for a Panerai. It's also a very, very standard looking Panerai in terms of design. It's pretty iconic, in fact, their design style on this watch. It's got the sandwich dial, it's got this really beautiful kind of brownish dial with this strap. For me, this is possibly one of the best looking Panerais in their whole collection, and it is at such a good price as well. And for those of you that are interested in a slightly smaller example, then they also do a 42mm version of this watch, which is the PAM 01392, and that has a retail price of slightly less. But really what I'm going to just use as the example in this selection is the 1351, because I think that is such a cool looking watch with the brown strap and the brown dial. Now moving on to our third brand, which is at the #1 spot for me. Really, if you're looking around £5,000–6,000, I think this is really where you should focus a lot of your attention. But of course, it all depends on what you prefer anyway, your personal taste. And the first watch we're going to look at is the Rolex Explorer 1, which is the reference 214270. The retail price on that watch is £5,000, but the market value is just over that, around £5,500. Really, really cool watch, super classic, possibly one of the best everyday watches you could buy. The reason being is because it's 39mm, so it's slightly smaller than some of the other watches in their collection. It's also slightly flatter than a lot of other watches in their collection as well, which makes it just better for everyday use because it's not as susceptible to getting dinked, knocked, because it doesn't protrude from your wrist quite as much as other watches. For example, like a Submariner. Really brilliantly versatile watch, this watch. Of course, it features their Oyster bracelet, Oyster clasp, very simple black dial with those numbers on it, and the indexes, really legible dial because it's black against the white hands. And this really is a piece that will never go out of fashion. You can have this watch for your whole life, and it still be appropriate to wear for almost any occasion as well. Yes, it does edge slightly on the more sporty side because of those numbers on the dial, and the overall style of the watch. But it definitely does feel smart because of that bracelet, and also the fact it is a black dial. Another really good thing about this watch is the fact that it's pretty much an all brushed finish watch, which makes it even better for everyday use because polished watches or polished finishes on watches tend to tarnish much quicker than brush finishes. Next watch we have is the Explorer 2. My favorite variation is the old 16570 reference, and specifically the white dial, the Polar Explorer. That is one of my favorite watches in the Rolex collection. Not to say that I don't like the new variation though, the 216570, that's a really cool watch as well. Now the approximate market value of this watch is around £6,000, so it's just kind of in our budget range. A very cool looking watch. You've got your 24-hour hand, your date function, a super legible dial, doesn't matter if you go for the black or the white dial. Personally, I just prefer the look of this watch in the white dial, but I would probably edge towards, like I said, the older model, the 16570, because it is slightly smaller at 40mm versus the newer reference, which is 42mm. And I also prefer the color of the hand on that one, the red, versus the orange on the newer one. Again, a really great thing about this watch is that it is in all brushed finish. Again, so good for everyday use, and it really does give me kind of old 116520 reference vibes about it. So yeah, really nice watch, especially for £6,000, an incredible piece. The older models will maybe go for a little bit more than the newer ones, but you can definitely pick up a really nice example for around the £6,000 mark. And finally, we have our number one spot, for me, the best watch in the industry for £6,000. And this watch is a watch that's copied almost by every brand out there. It doesn't matter what sort of price point, they've usually copied it. And that is the Rolex Submariner, and specific one we're looking at is the no date reference, which is 114060. A really cool watch that has a retail price of £5,750. So this watch is at number one, if you can get this watch at retail price. Yes, you could look at an older example, a used example, for around £6,000, probably a little bit over, but I've put it in there because technically, if you're patient, you would get this at £6,000. This watch doesn't really need me to talk too much about it. It kind of speaks for itself. It's an absolute icon in the industry of watches. It is a fantastic piece for many reasons. If you haven't seen my review of this watch already, then please go and check it out because it goes really in depth on the history of the Submariner and why this watch is so important. For me, this is possibly one of the best everyday watches you can buy. I would say this, along with the Explorer 1, are two brilliant, really good options. Maybe a Steel Daytona if you're looking at a higher price point as well. But this Submariner is just an icon. It is quite chunky and hard wearing. It's not as chunky obviously as a Sea Dweller, but it's hard wearing and it can take a few knocks, so it's definitely a really good watch for every day. The brushed finish again on this watch means that it is fantastic for everyday use because the polished edges are kind of hidden away on the sides, so it's slightly harder to scratch those areas. And of course the ceramic bezel is also incredibly useful for everyday use, as ceramic is incredibly hard and resistant to scratching and tarnishing. Possibly something that might irritate people about this over the 116610 LN, which is the black, the date variation of this watch, the date Submariner, is that obviously the date Submariner has a date function. Lots of people would miss that in this model, the 114060, but for me, going from a date to the non-date, I don't miss the date really at all. I just love this watch so much, and it's just a fantastic piece for everyday use. You cannot go wrong with the Rolex Submariner. Thanks guys for watching. Please let us know in the comments some watches that I may have missed around this price mark. I know there's a really big range of price points that we looked at within this one video, but I just kind of wanted to skip out some of the gaps in between and just go straight to £6,000 because it's a good mark. And the next price point I'll be doing will probably be around £8,000 to £10,000, and then we'll do many more after that. And next week, I think I'll probably do a Q&A video. So if you'd like to leave me some questions in the comments down below, then please do so. And I'll try and answer as many as I can in my Q&A next week. And as always, if you're interested in any of the watches mentioned in this video, then please don't hesitate to contact us. Our details are in the description and also at the end of this video. We'd be happy to call that watch into stock for you.